So is anyone excited for Christmas? I'm excited. The prophet Isaiah is excited. The psalmist in our responsorial psalm today, he's excited. Happy the people who know the joyful shout, he says. Forever I will sing the goodness of the Lord. Isaiah says, I will not be silent. Everyone today is shouting for joy. In the immortal words of Dr. Seuss's Grinch, tomorrow is Christmas. It's practically here. The Grinch is one person who's not so excited for Christmas. In fact, all this shouting and singing for joy he found kind of annoying. But, of course, even he eventually came around in the end. Now, the prophet Isaiah is writing about 600-700 years before Jesus is born. So he doesn't exactly know yet what all the excitement is about. But as a prophet, he can see that God has something in store. God is giving us something, and Isaiah knows that it's going to be exciting. It's kind of like that big present that you see under the Christmas tree. It's all wrapped up. You don't know what's in it, but you know it's going to be exciting. I remember a Christmas from my own childhood in the rural Maine town that I grew up in. We had a model train shop. And I used to love to go in and look at the little display they had set up there, the little electric trains running throughout the little miniature model village that was set up there, and that's what I wanted for Christmas. So, Christmas morning I came downstairs and I found not the electric train set that I was hoping for. It was a little plastic toy train with a note from Santa Claus attached to it that said, you're not quite old enough for the electric train set, but maybe next year. In the following year, I actually did get the electric train set that I had hoped for. So God's gifts, God's promises, they work a little bit like that. Everything in its time and all things in their season. If God disappoints us today, it might just mean that he's got something even better in store for tomorrow. Isaiah never actually lived long enough to see the fulfillment of what he was prophesying about. He never got the chance to see what was inside that box under the tree. But throughout his life, he could see God's goodness at work in the world around him. He understood that God had something in store. A time when no more shall people call you forsaken or your land desolate. He saw this at a time when his people were forsaken and his land was desolate. He saw this and he continued to joyfully proclaim what God had in store, the wonderful things that were yet to come. He understood that God's gifts are not an immediate thing. It's a long-term process. Matthew's Gospel, the opening passages today, they lay out 42 generations from Abraham to the birth of Jesus. And after these 42 generations, God's gift comes to us in the form of a newborn baby, an infant, someone who still has yet to grow into the person he will become, into the fulfillment of God's ultimate promise. This is why in the church we spent the last 4 weeks celebrating Advent in anticipation of tomorrow, of Christmas. And it's also why, as the rest of the world, by this time tomorrow, will have Christmas all packed up and done and over with, We in the church keep the celebration going for another week and a half almost. For 12 days we keep celebrating, and then we kind of stretch it out into the baptism of the Lord after that. We don't want it to end, because that is what God gives us. An ongoing process, something that is constantly in motion, constantly fulfilling itself. We're celebrating God coming into the world, becoming a part of human history. God's Christmas gift to us is that He is with us every day, sharing in our day-to-day lives. Like Isaiah, we won't always know what to expect, but we can always trust that God, in His goodness, will provide us with what we need. A lot like those Who's down in Whoville. After the Grinch took away all the trappings, all the outward show of the season, they didn't give in to disappointment. They continued to sing and to proclaim joyfully the true meaning of the season. And it makes me wonder sometimes, in that same situation, how would we compare to those Who's? If we woke up tomorrow and found no decorations, no tree, no presents, would we still be excited? Would we still sing and shout for joy? Or are those Who's down in Whoville maybe just a little bit more spiritually enlightened than we are? Something to think about.